As COVID's settling in some places in the world and vaccines are being introduced, I'm seeing more and more of my students getting shows and opportunities to play, which is honestly awesome. But in this video, I'm going to talk about something really that I think is important. It's just been coming to the surface a lot lately because I teach in person in Sydney. And quite often in the last class, I want people to come through and actually practice what we've done together, but on their own music. And they've been turning up with USB sticks and doing everything I've taught them properly, like they're nailing it. But then sometimes their USB keys aren't actually working with the equipment. I thought to myself, I'm like, imagine if, you turn up to play and all of a sudden, you put all this effort into your show and your USB keys don't work with the gear. Honestly, that would be a nightmare. And what I think it comes down to, there's two things it probably comes down to, and that is, firstly, is it actually the USB stick itself? Okay, that's one area, and we're going to talk all about that, and I'm going to give you some advice. But the other one is sometimes there is human error. And it's like, sure that I teach everyone the right thing, but what happens is maybe they just they do a shortcut, or maybe they try and go overthink stuff and they go in and maybe delete like the source files in themselves, and there's different things that can happen. So in this video, I'm actually going to give you a checklist, man, because when you turn up to play, you don't want those kind of issues. You want to just be able to focus on, connecting people through the parties, and you don't want this kind of stuff, but I want to make sure that when you turn up to play, that it doesn't go south for you. So stick around, because this video, it might not seem that important, but honestly, you want to make sure that you don't have these issues when you turn up to play live. So let's start with the actual USB keys before we talk about human error. So, okay, now I feel there are two ends of the spectrum here with USB keys, and one is cheap and nasty, and the other is top of the line, most expensive ones, okay? And I'll be honest, I have seen there could actually be problems with both. Okay, so sorry, that's my dogs. Okay, so let's start with the cheap and nasty ones. So I find the cheap ones tend to work, but they're just painfully slow, meaning you go to load your USB into the players and you're just waiting for the CDJ to read them. Now, I had a student come in, it kind of prompted this video a little bit because I had a few people with USB problems, okay? And what happened, they came to my school and they just had this really cheap USB. It looked like very plastic. It just looked, I don't know, it just looked kind of bad. And he put it in, but then we were waiting 2 minutes for it to even register. And then once it had registered that first time, we got it working. But then every time he was loading a new song, it was just taking a little while to read all the information. It was painful, man. And honestly, right, if you're turning up to play live, and let's say you're doing a changeover between DJs and your USB, you're like, oh my God, is it even gonna work? You could have a little bit of a mini freak out. Like, you want something that does load quickly. So, and that's where the other people, what they do is they think, oh fuck, okay, let's go get the fastest loading USB there is, and they go for the USB 3.1s. But here's the thing, I've had people also turn up here with USB 3.1s, and it's not compatible with the gear, and I just can't get it to work at all. And so I looked into that, and Pioneer released a statement saying that some USBs won't work with the players and your only option is to use a different USB. Now, here's the thing. That could be a pretty big setback, because let's imagine, right, you turn up to play, you've put hours into your set, you promoted your show, all your friends are there to see you, you've even bought the most expensive USB stick, and then you go to play and your USB isn't actually compatible with the players. Honestly, it'd be heartbreaking. Okay, it's partly why I'm doing this video. I don't want that to happen to you. So which USB sticks are best? Okay, now I can only talk to my experience. This isn't a sponsored video. This is just like my personal experience. And that is, I like the USB 3.0s. I've never had issues with them. And I personally use the SanDisk Ultras. Okay, so SanDisk Ultra USB 3.0s. But when I do turn up to play, the chances are that I only need one USB stick, right? As more often than not, there is a link cable that connects the players, but I do always turn up with a second copy of the same USB with the exact same playlist on it. So this means I have one for each player, just in case the link cable connecting the players, maybe it's faulty, or perhaps it's even not even there. Okay, so that means then I've got USBs ready to go. But another thing to say is too that I'm keeping the USBs that I'm using to DJ with solely dedicated to DJing. So it means I don't go put videos and other crap on them that could potentially slow them down. And another thing is too, I'm actually keeping it kind of 32 gigs and under, because if you go get like really big USB sticks, that can also slow it down as well. So I think having 32 gigs or 16 gigabytes of music, it's a lot of music, okay? And again, if I'm turning up, I'd have two, probably only need one, but I'd have the same content on both. Now, before I go into human error and some of the big fuck-ups, right, that people make when loading their USBs, like it's their fault, I just want to say one last thing about making the USB stick solely dedicated to DJing. So this doesn't mean, okay, that I use the same USBs to play from as the places where I keep my original source files, like my music files. So personally, I keep all my music on my computer, but if you have storage issues, grab a dedicated hard drive for your music, and that should 100% be separate to the USB keys you're playing off for a few reasons. So one, you know, you want to keep your USBs clean and fast loading, but also sometimes when you're turning up to play live, like let's say you have a few drinks after your set and you lose your USB, if it's just got my playlist that I used to play on from that night, it's not a big deal because it's just copies of everything that's on Rekordbox. But if you've got all your music library on here, that could be pretty catastrophic. So okay, so let's move on to human error. So firstly, if you're using USB compatible gear in clubs, it means it will be Pioneer, and all Pioneer USB compatible gear reads Rekordbox. So that means you're gonna have to prepare your music in Rekordbox and then drag your pre-prepared playlist within Rekordbox onto your USB keys in export mode, and then wait for the playlist to finish loading before ejecting the USB, okay? However, some people, in wanting to be really organized, they sabotage themselves and they go into the USB itself outside of Rekordbox and they start playing around with the Pioneer and contents folders. Now, if you delete any of the files or even delete those folders thinking they're irrelevant, you corrupt your USB. And when you go to load tracks onto the players, it's going to come up with an error message saying the files or the songs cannot be found. So in short, the contents and Pioneer folders, they're automatically put on that USB as soon as Rekordbox detects that USB, okay? Don't touch them, okay? Just don't touch them, they're out of bounds, okay? And what it means is if you want to put new music on the USB or remove music or playlist, do it within the Rekordbox software, okay? Don't go outside of the software directly to the USB. Okay, now one last thing to note, when you're playing live, always over prepare. So that means if you've got an hour set, don't just prepare an hour's worth of music, prepare at least twice as much music. And that means you've lots of options and you've got flexibility. And what I mean by that is, let's imagine you can get through 20 tracks in your hour. And you turn up with 20 tracks. Honestly, what happens if the DJ before you plays half your tracks, or perhaps the music you prepared isn't getting the best response, or less likely, but still possible, maybe the DJ after you doesn't show up and the venue wants you to play for another hour. So by being over prepared, you can be ready for any eventuality. So if it was me, right, okay, man, I've always got way bigger playlists than I could possibly play, so I've got room to move. But as well as that, I could have playlists by genre, I could have past and present sets that I've built for specific events, and you just want to have a lot of music to pull from. Okay, so all in all, okay, if you've got a club show coming up and you're nervous, here's a checklist, okay? Number one, I'd go for USB 3.0, not 3.1s. And I personally like the SanDisk Ultras. I'll link it in below those ones. Also, I would have my USBs solely dedicated to DJing, so I don't use the USBs to store other crap. And I always take in 2 USBs just in case the link cable doesn't work. I always run my music through Rekordbox before exporting with Rekordbox onto the USB keys, and I never mess around with the Pioneer or contents folders. That's where Pioneer stores all the metadata that makes it work with the gear, so don't touch those contents folders, again, Pioneer folders. And another thing is, if you're really nervous, Go in early, plug in the USB before the doors open, get a feel for the decks before anyone arrives, and just make sure that's going to make you feel a bit more confident. If you're turning up 5 minutes before your set, then you don't know what people before you have played. You want to turn up, support the parties, get a feel for what's working. And if you're there before doors open, not only can you see how the whole night's unfolding, you get a feel for the night, but again, you can just check that everything's working and the venue will be impressed by that. But remember too, now we're going into venue politics slightly, which is different. But you want to kind of stick around and support the nights as well. That whole venue politics thing though, that's huge, okay? And yes, there are certain things you can do to assure repeat shows and even how to get shows in the first place. But that's another video topic, okay? Or even topics in themselves. I've got a whole club pack section on that in my course. There's a lot to that. That's actually my specialty. But anyway, for today, hope that's been helpful. And all in all, if you follow this simple yet very important advice, you should have nothing to worry about. And you can keep your focus on where it should be. And that is using the events as an opportunity to connect like-minded people through creating world-class atmospheres that wow people. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe to help me grow the channel. And welcome to the Club Ready Tribe.